Welcome, conscious creators, to the Christos Chronicles. I am Christos, and today we are going to be kicking off a new series. Yes, a new series. And I'm really excited because I've been wanting to do something different on this channel for some time now. Something that allows me to put out content a lot more frequently without overthinking it. And I think that this is the perfect way for me to do such. This is also a good way for me to build a connection with my audience and share some of the things that I go through on a personal level and be able to give you guys some insights as to how I may have overcome or strive to overcome them. Now, with that being said, I really want to just get into what we'll be discussing, how you guys can stay involved, and what I want you guys to take away ultimately from these episodes. First and foremost, the inspiration that went behind Christos Chronicles, like I said, was really just some of my personal struggles from mental, spiritual, physical, emotional, just life, and I think that oftentimes a lot of people try to gloss over the bad things that happen in their life, or not even just the bad, but the things that are, not so noteworthy to talk about. And I really want to talk about those things because I think that this is what makes us stronger as individuals, is being able to address our darkness and being able to bring out the light qualities as well. But we can't do that if we're not willing to go through our dark phases as well. It's a part of our totality as human beings. So that's really the inspiration behind the Christos Chronicles, and also being able to authentically connect with you guys on that level. Some of the topics that we're going to be talking about range from astrology, numerology, karma, and divine laws of the universe. Now, the reason why we're going to be talking about these things is because I feel like they were foundational on my spiritual journey to becoming who I am today. And I think that they can also help you guys in cultivating who you desire to be in your future. So those are some of the things that we will be talking about, but they won't be limited to those things. These are just the foundational topics that we will be talking about. I will also strive to talk about some worldly, mundane events that happen because I do believe that they have a strong correspondence to these topics when it comes to astrology and numerology. And I also try my best to tie these things together over on my Instagram account. So if you are not a follower of my Instagram, then you're kind of missing out on some of the things that I do talk about from that aspect. But I will try to bridge the gap between my social media and YouTube from time to time with those topics. So with that being said, you guys can also get engaged by either commenting on this video, or you can send me an email. I would strongly recommend you guys send me an email because I read emails and it's just more privately disclosed. Also, I will keep you guys' names and information disclosed. I will never expose you if you want me to talk about something in particular on my channel that you may be going through. This is an open platform, not only just for me to share my struggles, but for you guys to ask questions, or if you want me to give insight to something that you may be going through. No, I don't have all of the answers, so I'm gonna just try my best. So bear with me, guys. So that's pretty much, the inspiration. That's how you guys can stay in touch. And this is pretty much what we'll be talking about. So let's just get into the meat of today's discussion, which is the 7 rules of the fool. Now, for those of you who are new into divination or tarot or anything of that nature, no, this is not witchcraft. No, this is not sorcery. No, it's none of those things. And I'm going to be talking about the Fool card today from really just an evolutionary standpoint when it comes to tarot divination. Well, not even tarot divination, but just tarot from the aspect to me that it presents in human evolution. And you can see that because when you look at the tarot deck has 72 cards. 22 are the major arcana, and the other are the minor arcana. And when you look at the cards of the major arcana, they tell a story. So I will be using the cards of the major arcana throughout our discussions from time to time to show you guys, alongside with some other principles, how we can evolve in our human consciousness. So today, that's why we will be using the Fool Tarot card and what are the 7 rules of the Fool on our spiritual initiation. Spiritually, the Fool is one of the most powerful cards in the entire tarot because it represents the soul before conditioning, the part of you that moves by faith, intuition, and divine trust. Now, there are three prereqs to me when it comes to embodying your spiritual initiation. And I think that it starts with faith, intuition, and divine trust. Now, let's just cover these things real quick, briefly. Faith. We all come into this life, especially those who are chosen to do something special in this world. A lot of us are initiated through some form of religion, and that comes through either Christianity for a lot of people who are born and raised on the West, or Catholicism. For somebody who may be born on the East, it may be Islam, it may be Buddhism. But we are initiated in our journey through some form of faith, whether that be having faith in a higher being, or whether that be having faith in yourself. At the end of the day, I feel like the fool must have faith in something in order to embark on their journey. That's like the battery in your back, is having faith. It's really what creates the narrative along the way, is having a sense of faith. Now, your compass is going to be your intuition. Your intuition is going to be your ability to know when to go, when to stay, when to change certain things about your lifestyle. And I think your intuition is going to be a light as you continue to trust it, because then you'll know that what you're doing is the right thing for your soul, and you won't question that. And I think sometimes, a lot of times, we question, are we making the right decisions? Are we going in the right direction? But when you listen to your intuition is strongly connected to your emotions, how you feel. And if that is passion, if that is aligned with, things that are going to get you closer to you becoming the more higher version of yourself, then yeah, you should follow your intuition, or learn to follow your intuition more. So intuition is also a prerequisite, guys. And last but not least, having divine trust. Now, to me, divine trust can be seen in individuals like monks. When you look at monks really embody having divine trust. When you look at a monk leaves its temple with no money, with no bags, no anything. A monk just walks freely. And I think that that can be seen in the fool as well. The fool doesn't really go into its journey with a lot of baggage. So I think that in order for us to receive, we must be willing to travel light and have divine trust that things will be attributed to us along the way. So these are the three prerequisites that I feel like one must embody when starting their journey on the Fool adventure. All right, so let's take a closer look at the Fool Tarot card. Now, when we look at the Fool Tarot card, there is a lot of symbolism that we can take away from this art. First and foremost, the Fool is represented by the number 0. 0 in numerology is the womb, the alpha, the omega, the starting point, what we ultimately come back to, understanding that we know nothing. And that's completely fine, because our understanding of us knowing nothing is what caused us to take the journey in the first place. So this is really the spark of life. The Fool, in my personal opinion, is represented by the astrological sign Aries. And when you really think about it, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It is a fire sign. It is the sign of initiation. So to me, the Fool represents an initiation into your purpose. A lot of people don't even take the step, and this is what the Fool encourages: taking the step into the unknown. Yes, there may be danger ahead. Yes, there may be uncertainty, but the Fool is not concerned with those things. The Fool is concerned with following their purpose. Now, let's get into some of the symbolism that we can see from this art. First, we see that the Fool is carrying a satchel with his head high. What this represents is, one, the Fool has a degree of optimism. The satchel represents the Fool is packing light. He isn't really bringing too much on his journey. Second, we see that there is an illuminated white light luminary. This luminary represents the Fool stepping into his purpose and being guided into his purpose. Next, we also see that the Fool has a white like flower in his hand. This represents the fool's purity and innocence. We also see that the fool is accompanied by a white like animal or a dog. This dog represents the fool's spiritual protection. Now, you see that the fool is also at the edge of a like cliff. As I said, this represents the uncertainty, the unknown, and the fool is aware of that, but he still walks with bravery and courage. We also see that the background is yellow, and the color yellow represents joy, which is also a characteristic that the fool embodies on his journey quite a bit, is joy. So this pretty much is the deeper symbolism behind the fool card. And I think that from understanding the fool card, we'll understand a lot about growth. We'll understand how we are to embrace challenges, because ultimately that's really what stops us from growing. And this was something that my father always used to tell me as a kid, was the moment that you say that you're grown, you stop growing. And I think ultimately that's something that's helped me along my journey of being receptive to new information, is understanding that I'm a fool. I know little to nothing about whatever it was at the time that I was striving to learn. And that's okay, because it allows me to be more free in that. So I think that that's something that we can really take away from being the fool. Is being the fool is not a bad thing. It really allows us to be more authentic. All right, so let's discuss how the fool evolves through 7-year cycles of life. Human life unfolds in 7-year karmic cycles: 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21, 21 to 28, 28 to 35, and so on. Each cycle is a new identity. The fool ushers you into a new cycle of 7. So let's talk about each cycle. 0 to 7. 0 to 7 is your initiation into this new world. It can be scary, but in this part of our life, we learn a lot about our emotions, who we can trust, and things of that like. From 7 to 14, we start to become a little bit more devious, right? We start to become aware of good and bad. From 14 to 21, we start to realize that we can make our own decisions. But with making our own decisions comes consequences. From 21 to about 28, we start to see that life is tough. And with that toughness that we must have, we must also have tough skin. And I think that that's something that I learned during my 20s, was that life wasn't as peachy as I imagined it to be. 28 to 35. 28 to 35, I feel like you really start to understand what you want and what you're willing to sacrifice to get it. And at this point, I feel like you start to see if the people around you, the environment around you, is actually conducive to you obtaining that. So to me, that's how human life unfolds in these 7-year karmic cycles. Of course, there's a lot of influence that happens in between these karmic cycles and how we ultimately shape our reality. But for the most part, that's pretty much how we can look at our evolution, and how we can approach it is through these 7-year cycles. The 7 rules of the fool. Rule number 1, trust before you know. Walk first, understanding comes later. Faith is moving without proof. Now, for me, the perfect example of rule number 1 was me moving to California. When I moved to California in 2019, before the pandemic, I really was uncertain on a lot of things and how they would pan out when I got here. And I just really took the leap of faith. At that time, I probably only had about a little under $1,000 to my name. And I just bought a flight, and I remember booking an Airbnb. And when I got to California, I was awarded an opportunity to be able to manage someone's property where I didn't even have to pay. So I was able to get that money back, and I was able to put that towards, other things that allowed me to be more stable in California. So I think the first thing that one must do is take that leap of faith. And I think that I did that with just buying my plane ticket. And then also look at the time, and it was right before the pandemic. This was December 2019. The pandemic happened in March 2020. So had I waited a little bit later, who knows what would have happened. I probably wouldn't even be in California today. So I think that that's why it's important for the fool to just take the step and allow life to formulate as you go. Rule number 2, travel light. Drop the baggage or miss the timeline. You can't carry the old story into the new life. Now, also on my adventure to going to California, I had to leave behind a lot of things, not just physical, but spiritual as well. And that was family. A lot of my family stays in Detroit. That's where I'm from, Detroit, Michigan. So I had to leave behind a lot of people. I had to leave behind places that, I grew comfortable with going to. And I also had a family. So that was really hard for me was, leaving behind not just physical things, but emotional parts of myself as well. So I think that that's something that the fool must also understand is that you're going to have to leave behind a lot of things on this adventure into new territory, and it gets uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Rule number 3, follow excitement. Joy is divine direction. What lights you up is where your soul is calling you. Now, in 2019, when I was eager to come to California, at that time I was following my excitement. And I say that because 2 years prior in 2017, I had came to California and I stayed for about 2 months. And when I stayed then, I knew that California was where my heart was and where I wanted to be. It just really put a lot of joy in my heart, just going to the beach, seeing the sunset, all of those things. So I think that the fool is required to follow their excitement. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a new location. It can be your purpose in life. You need to follow what brings you the most excitement because joy is divine direction. And I think that the Bible does a good job at highlighting the power of joy. To me, it does a good job of also highlighting the power of faith too as well, because when you pair these two, joy and faith, they become contagious. It's like you become a magnet to your purpose, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, we manifest through our frequency and our vibration. So if we are being led by our joy and we are being led by excitement along the process too, and faith, that's dangerous, guys. So rule number 3 is following the excitement. And that excitement also is going to continue. It doesn't necessarily have to stop or be limited to one thing. That excitement can always be in your life, and sometimes that's hard for people to find, is that excitement. So don't take your excitement for granted, guys. Take your excitement as a gift. Rule number 4, stay present. Only the next step matters. The fool lives in now, not in fear. Now, for me, I feel like the moment that I was challenged to stay present was when I was managing the Airbnb property. And during that time, when I first got to California in 2019, it was cool, like being able to manage a property, not having to have the stress of paying rent or things like that when you first get to a new state, especially California, which is one of the most expensive states in America. It was cool, but it also took me away from the reason as to why I initially came here. And I think that that was something that I had to align myself with more by staying present. And I was called to do that, I feel like, around the time frame of the pandemic. And it was perfect because I had left that position right before the quarantine had begun. So I feel like if I wasn't present, if I wasn't thinking about what my purpose was, why I came to California, then I would have just grew comfort in that position and I wouldn't have continued on my adventure of what I came to California to pursue. So I think that that's really important, guys, is staying present. And we can do that through just being mindful. And I like to do that through journaling, through meditation, through taking walks. But staying present is really key for the fool on their spiritual journey. Rule number 5, leap anyway. Fear doesn't mean stop. It means transform. Every risk is a rebirth. So even in moments of uncertainty, you still have to leap. And that's the hard part, like it's really just taking that leap, because after you take that leap, a lot of things in life start to make sense. But most people never take the leap. And that really is due to fear. Fear paralyzes us a lot of times from even learning new things or being receptive to new things, because fear is a strong threshold of one's mind and limitation of one's mind. But rule number 5 of the Fool is leap anyway. If you don't leap, then nothing happens. There is no effect from the cause. So this is why we must take action, guys, because if we don't, then there won't be any change in our reality. Rule number 6, trust the protection. You are guided, even when unsure. You never walk alone. Now, another thing on our spiritual journey is understanding that we are spiritually protected. A lot of times we stay in our hometown or we stay in areas that we're most comfortable because we feel protected. We feel as though, oh, if I hit rock bottom, I can always go stay with my aunt. I can always fall back on family. But when you are on your spiritual journey, you are forced to rely on forces that you can't necessarily see. So that requires, like I said in the beginning, having divine trust, having faith, and being led by your intuition. Rule number 7, begin again. Mastery starts with innocence. New eyes unlock new worlds. Now, it's easy to settle in one particular field, state, occupation, whatever it is. But that is comfort, my friend. And I'm here to challenge us to always stay in movement, because movement is medicine. The moment we stop moving is the moment we become stagnant, and stagnation is death. This is why the universe is always expanding, because movement is everything. So we must be willing to begin again, and that doesn't always necessarily have to be physical. It can be also mental, learning new things, so this is why the Fool is important. This is why the Fool corresponds back to the number 0, because 0 is infinity. It's energy that never dies out. So this is ultimately the 7th rule of the Fool, is begin again. Ultimately, the Fool teaches us that faith, freedom, and courage are the fastest path to our destiny. Now, if you are an individual that has been questioning if you should take a leap of faith into your purpose, into a new career, into a new location, then if you found this video, I think that answer is yes. And if you want to get more guidance on your journey, feel free to reach out to me in an email, and I will get back to you guys. It is my pleasure. Now, this is the first entry into Christos Chronicles. I want to say thank you guys for chiming in, and until the next time, wholeness.